Hi. Can everyone hear me well? Even if I talk from here? Perfect. Okay. What an interesting crowd. It's like all the guys are here and all the girls are over here. Why is that? You guys are so weird. So, who here has ever said the phrase, dude, I only need like 5 hours a day and I'm fine? Come on, hands up. Who said it? Okay. Who's kind of proud that they sleep less than 8 hours a day? Hands up. Yeah, perfect. So, I'm Swizec, as he already said. I'm a programmer. I write books. It's not very interesting. If you want to know more, just Google me. So, I wrote a book, Why Programmers Work at Night. Or I say I wrote it. I've been working on it for like a year and a half because I'm a lazy bastard. It's about programmers and why we do what we do and how we do it. But let's talk about sleep. Sleep is kind of important. You need it to basically to survive. We don't know why you need it. It's one of those things where researchers who have been working on it for like 20 years say the best they've come up with is we sleep because we get sleepy. But there's a thing called short sleepers, who are people who essentially sleep only like 5 to 6 hours a day, and they show a very high correlation with high achievement. They get a lot done. They're super awesome. They are more driven. They have this sort of thing where in a psychological setback, they fall and they just get up and keep working, and they're super awesome. And who here of you thinks they're a short sleeper, that they don't need a lot of sleep and they're super awesome and they just pick up from failure and just get on with life? Come on, hands up. Okay, 4 or 5 people, good. That's because there are only 1 to 3% of short sleepers in the world. The guy who researches them has been working on it for like 10 years now, and he has only found 20 people who are actual short sleepers. Everybody else is just chronically sleep deprived. And that's a very bad thing, because when you don't get enough sleep, you are essentially drunk. And 30% of at least adult Americans are sleep deprived all the freaking time. They just never get enough sleep. And when you're sleep deprived, your reaction times are slower, your memory gets weaker, you find it very difficult to focus, and you essentially, the statistic I've read is that if you miss like an hour or 2 of sleep, you are impaired as if you were legally drunk in terms of driving a car. So please don't drive if you're sleepy. And I know all of you drive when you're sleepy because you drive to work in the morning. Right, one more thing. I read a statistic last night that said about 40% of people between the ages of 18 and 35 say they have fallen asleep involuntarily at least once during the day in the last month. Isn't that kind of weird? Like, almost 40% of people just fall asleep during the day even if they don't mean to. So why the hell do we do that? Why don't we just get our sleep? I mean, it's not that hard. You lie down, you pass out, you wake up. I mean, how hard can it be? The bed is comfy, it's warm, it's nice. But it's actually kind of cool not to sleep, isn't it? Like, take Marissa Meyer. She's an interesting example lately. She says that she works 130 hours a week. Imagine that, 130 hours a week. She gets like what, 5 hours of sleep maybe? Probably less. And one of the big secrets of the big guys is that they use a lot of drugs. But please don't do drugs. Although they are fun. It is kind of cool. We really appreciate people who don't need sleep. Like Edison was a big hero because he said that he only sleeps like 2 hours a day, and a man should never sleep. A man should just work until he passes out, wake up 20 minutes later and get back to work. And he actually made his, I'll say, slaves work just as much. And pretty much all the big achievers we talk about in the tech world, they all say, I never sleep, I'm super awesome. And we believe them. We just take it for granted. Especially in the startup culture, it's very common to just not sleep. and to work too much, and so on. And we really love the genius who can stay up all night and solve a fancy problem. Now let's talk about programmers. Programmers are the kind of people who think complicated things. That's pretty much all we do. We take a large system, we try to understand it, we break it down in our brain, we build up this huge crystal castle of intricate dependencies and this thing and that thing, and it's super complicated, and you hold it all in your head, and if somebody distracts you, it just comes crashing down, it all dies, and you basically have to spend another hour getting back up to speed, learning where all the little variables are in all the files. And it's actually hard work. It's like, I mean, how many of you here are programmers? Hands up. Almost all of you. So you know how very, very annoying it is when somebody distracts you when you're working. And this is something that we have in common with Tesla. He said that it's impossible to work if you're not alone, if there are people around you who are trying to talk to you, who make you think about other things than work. And it's really essentially just because we do this complicated work. I mean, there's no way around it. We do really complicated shit. Like, have you seen the way modern systems are built? You're using a system that's got like hundreds of files, which are all thousands of lines of code, and if you want to work with it effectively, you have to know where everything is by heart, and that just takes a lot of time to learn. And you have to learn it every single time, because if you take a break, you will forget half of it, and if you take a long break, you will forget most of it. And one of the reasons why programmers are also known as machines that turn caffeine into code is because caffeine does actually help you focus. It's a wonderful drug, and it is a drug. Don't kid yourself. You are probably all addicted to it. I saw you drinking coffee right before. But luckily for us, caffeine is fairly safe. Did you know you can drink about 2,000 milligrams of caffeine per day for your whole life without any adverse side effects? I think that's kind of cool, because if that wasn't the case, I would probably be dead by now. Where was I going with this? Yeah, caffeine is awesome. One of the things it does is it blocks adenosine receptors, which are adenosine is essentially a hormone that makes you sleepy. But the funny thing about it is there's none in the morning, because you just woke up. So all of those morning coffees you just had are not actually making you more awake. You're still sleep deprived, you're still tired, you were still partying last night until, from what I hear, an hour ago. And another thing that caffeine does that does actually help you is it increases blood flow to your brain, which is really nice because it gives your brain more oxygen, which means it can work better. And one of the things you probably didn't realize is that caffeine actually helps with physical stamina. It physically makes you stronger and more able to work more and longer, which means that while that morning coffee you drank makes you feel super awake and kind of alert because of all that blood flowing to your brain and your physical stamina being high and up, you are still sleepy, and your brain is essentially still that drunk bastard who didn't get enough sleep and who is going to make bad decisions today. And I find it kind of weird that we really like working that way, that we just really, imagine that. Programmers are working on machines that put people into space, or that X-ray people, or just, you know, we kind of do save lives sometimes. Most of the time we just make cat sharing apps, but sometimes some of us actually, people's lives depend on us. And it's kind of scary to think that most of those systems were built by people who are thinking with half of their brain, and the rest is kind of asleep. But on a happier note, there is a concept of flow. Who here has ever heard of flow? Yay, 4 people, awesome. So for the rest of us, flow is a sort of psychological state. It's a psychological, It's a psychological and emotional state, and I'm not sure if those are the same thing or not, where you fall into your work so much that you stop noticing the passage of time. You just work, your work pulls you forward, it drags you on, you just keep working, 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 and suddenly it's 10 hours later and you forgot that you didn't sleep, you didn't eat, you didn't even go to the bathroom, you just worked, and it's probably one of the best pieces of work you've ever produced. For instance, Michelangelo is known to have always gotten into flow when he was painting the Sistine Chapel, and I think I read that he essentially worked so much, he forgot to eat and sleep and everything for like 2 or 3 days, and then he would just pass out, just bam. And his people dragged him off the scaffolding and put him to bed, I hope. At least I hope he got some sleep, because that is some awesome ceiling he did. There's another example where Ayrton Senna, he was doing a qualifying lap in Monaco, and he said that he fell into flow so much that he essentially had an outer body experience. It felt like somebody else was driving the car and he was just along for the ride. And I don't know if any of you are F1 fans, but that is said to be the best F1 lap in all of history. And he actually found, I think, 30 seconds on the track on top of the guy who had the same car as he did. 2 people driving one of the most difficult tracks in the world, where with the same car, essentially the same amount of training, because they all just train all the time, and the guy who fell into flow beat the other guy by 30 seconds on a track where a lap lasts less than 2 minutes. And people can do that with code as well. You go into the flow. You can see this in movies like The Social Network, where they say they wire in, they put on headphones, they put on a hoodie, and they just code away. And it's a cool feeling. I don't know how many of you have experienced it, but it's really nice when your work just gives you those little challenges, just enough to keep you interested, not enough to make it feel like you don't know what you're doing. And you just keep working, 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 and every time you solve a problem, a new one just pops up and you just get on with it. And do any of you play video games? Video games are a nice example. There we go. A lady in the front plays video games. Shame on all of you guys. Video games are essentially designed to get you into flow. They do a lot of testing and a lot of just whatever video game developers do. I guess drink coffee and not sleep, to figure out the exact formula to get you into flow, to forget that you're wasting time playing that game. Another nice example is, for instance, Facebook or Twitter, or all of those things that we usually do instead of working. So why does all of this matter? Give me just one more second. So let's talk about work. I know all of you work. How many of you have bosses? Okay, a few of you have bosses. How many of you have annoying clients? There we go. A lot of freelancers here today. Nice. So, how many productive hours do you think you get in a day? This was a poll on Hacker News about 2 weeks ago, where somebody asked, how many productive hours do you get in the day? Don't count meetings, don't count the time you spend talking to your coworkers. It doesn't matter how long you're actually at work, just how long are you actually productive for. And surprisingly, most people said they are only productive for 2 to 4 hours in the whole day. I honestly expected 4 to 6 to win, and if you ask any American ever, they will tell you that they work at least 10 hours a day. But there's a big difference between how much you work and how much time you spend at work. Who here goes to work, spends 8 hours there, and then goes home? Come on, hands up. Nobody. Who spends more than 8 hours at work? Ah, there we go. People wasting their whole time, their whole day, time of day they're not spending with their family, not working on their hobbies, time they're not watching movies, working out, going into nature, just to work 4 hours in a day. Isn't that kind of ridiculous when you think about it? Like, why are you at work all of your day, your whole life essentially revolves around it, and all you get out of it is like 4 hours. You could, if you just optimized your day a little better, that would give you like 6 hours, or let's say 5 hours, because you do need breaks, that you could spend on anything other than work. Or do you really love being at work that much? Who here would rather do anything other than waste their time at work, sitting in front of a computer when they're not actually working? There we go. Some of you who at least are not afraid to admit you're not raging workaholics. And the problem with work, why it's so unproductive, is that a lot of the time it's all just right now. Everything needs to happen right now. Like, a client has an emergency, you have to solve it right fucking now. And your boss has a weird idea at 2 a.m., and hopefully they don't wake you up for that, but they come in at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whatever, and they rush to your desk and they're like, dude, we have to do this. It's like, our customers are gonna love it, we're just gonna do this thing, and I don't care what you were working on before, just do this. And who has a boss or a client who is like that, who just demands your attention right now, no matter what you're doing? Okay, some of you. That's a lot better than I thought. I was expecting most people had bosses like that, but I guess situations are improving or people are lying. And that's one of the problems, because as we mentioned earlier, programmers need to focus, they need to think deep, they need to get into a problem and solve it. And we can't do that if somebody just rushes in and demands our attention immediately. And let's try for a better example. Who picks up the phone when it rings immediately? Ah, everyone. Stop doing that. Your phone does not need you. If you're not a brain surgeon and people's lives don't depend on you, you do not need to pick up the phone when it rings. You can call them back when you have time for them. That's an important thing to start doing. And one of the problems here is the dichotomy between the manager and the maker schedule. Most programmers work on a maker schedule, which essentially means that you need large blocks of time that are reserved for work, where you sit down and you expect nothing to distract you, or at least nothing super highly important to distract you. Like, I understand if there's an earthquake, you should hide under the table and stop working. That's probably more important. Where was I? Right, manager schedule. Makers who produce things work on a schedule where you need like at least 3 or 4 hours blocks of time where nothing else happens. While managers are the kind of people who work on a half-hour or an hour schedule, where they just look at their agenda and they know, okay, this is happening next hour, and I can just go do that. And their whole world is built around interruption, because all they do is get interrupted and solve people's problems through voodoo magic or whatever it is that managers do. They pick up phones, they talk to people, and your manager, if you have a good one, is actually supposed to defend your maker schedule from their manager schedule. They are supposed to be the kind of person who talks to the client and says, look, we can't do this right now, but we can maybe get to it tonight, or we can get to it tomorrow. They have to protect you from the outside world. Now, unfortunately, a lot of them forget that that's their job. And I remember having a manager when I was just starting out in web development. I was working at a web agency, and my life was basically, I think I was taking care of like 5 or 6 projects, and all of them had separate managers, and I didn't have a manager of my own. So what ended up happening most of the time was that I was just getting up to speed on a project, like getting 20 minutes in, and somebody would rush in and start talking to me about a different project and asking me, like, dude, I have a client on the phone right now. Can you do this? Is this something that is possible to be done? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't remember anything from that project. I'm in this project right now. And I would basically just spend my whole day context switching every 20 minutes, every half an hour, and I obviously didn't get anything done. Like, how can you get anything done in half an hour? I can't. And one of the other things with the maker schedule and the manager schedule is that if you want to get into flow, if you want to get actual work done, there's also the expectation of interruption that's a problem. Have you ever noticed that if you know you have a meeting in half an hour, you really can't get anything done in that half hour? Like, you try to start working, but you're like, well, I can start working, and I'm going to open up Emacs or whatever you use, and I'm going to open up my browser and start working. And, well, OK, now 5 minutes have passed, and that means I only have 25 minutes, 25 more minutes of time. Maybe I can get something done. So you open up your issue tracker, and you spend 5 minutes going through all those little tickets and deciding, OK, I can do this one in 25 minutes. Oh, but now I have only 20 minutes of time. OK, I can get it started, and I'll work on it later. And then you find the file where you're supposed to work. You open it up, and it's suddenly 15 minutes to the meeting. And you say, well, OK, maybe I should actually prepare for the meeting a bit. No, maybe? And then you open Twitter, and you start thinking about, well, I'm going to, oh, fuck, it's 10 minutes to it. And you just stand up and just spend the next 10 minutes on Twitter, or you go you grab a drink or whatever, and then you go to the meeting, and oh fuck, it's another boring meeting. Like, does anyone have fun meetings here? No? Okay. I never have fun meetings unless they're with my cat. My cat is awesome. So what can you do? What can you do to help you in your workday to actually get work done, to keep your clients or your managers or your bosses or whomever happy, and to just feel like a productive, sane human being who spends more time out of work than in work? And even if you're raging workaholics and you really love your work, I would suggest that you do not spend the majority of your time on paid work and instead work on nice pet projects that are actually fun. And that guy with the shotgun and no shirt is Mr. Hemingway. And he said that he is one of the I'm not going to say he's one of the most prolific authors out there, because that was Isaac Asimov, who actually wrote like 200 books. Did you know that? When Asimov stopped working on science fiction, he would just write books on any topic, and he churned out like 1 book a month. Anyway, Hemingway was not a night person. He was one of those morning people. And he would wake up every day at 6 a.m., just wake up, go to the typewriter, start typing, and by like 11 a.m. or noon, he was done. He stopped working. He really loved his job. He basically was working on his life's dream, I guess. He was an author. He loved being an author. But he never worked past noon. He essentially never worked more than 4 or 5 hours in any day. He just wouldn't. And he said that one of the hardest things about writing is actually finding something to do with all that other time in your life when you're not working, where you just have to fill the day somehow so you get the energy back so you can work. Because one of the important things is you should never sprint. I know we all love that rush where you go and you just bang out code or whatever it is you're working on for like 10 hours every day. But that's not sustainable. You can't do that for a very long time. If any of you here have heard of extreme programming, it was a fad in like the late 90s. It's one of their, they were, how should I put this? They were all about getting programmers to churn out as much work as possible. They were really extreme programming was a management movement made for managers, not for programmers. But they did get one thing right. They said that if you have overtime a week, there shouldn't be overtime for at least 2 weeks after that. And who here works overtime every week? There we go. We have 4 people who admit to being terrible at their work. I read an interesting article the other day that said, essentially, if it takes you more than 40 hours a week to do your job, we are going to fire you because you are apparently terrible at your job. You can't do it. But that's kind of mean, because most of the time it's not actually our fault that we can't do our job in the 40 hours a week because of all that other stuff I just talked about. And I changed the slide. I did not mean to change the slide. Ah, what's going on? I'm still on don't sprint. Damn it. Anyway, so a lot of people, especially young guys who are one of the exploited classes in Silicon Valley, they don't know they're exploited because they're being paid large sums and their offices are shiny, but they are being exploited because most startups expect their people to just work like 80 hours a week because, hey, that's normal, everybody does it. But it's important to not sprint. You should just take a project and work on it every day, every single day. Work on it even for just an hour, even for just 2 hours, or however much you can manage, but it's important to just keep at it and be like an orc. Don't sprint, because an orc who just walks continuously, just goes step after step, day after day, they will eventually outrun you. No matter how hard you sprint, no matter how hard you can run, you will get tired, and the person who doesn't sprint, who just walks at a normal, manageable pace, they will outpace you. Because as humans, one of our greatest advantages is our persistence. We are persistence hunters. I don't know if you've ever been a gazelle. I haven't. But imagine having a hunter where you run as fast as you can. You just run, and then you get tired and you fall asleep. And when you wake up in the morning, that guy is just there. He's just standing there, like calmly walks up to you. He's just like, hi. And you start running again. And you run, and you run, and you run. And you fall down when you're tired, and that guy is just there. He comes maybe an hour later. And eventually, as a gazelle, you get so tired that basically the human walks up to you. It's like, eh. And you can't do anything about it. And that's what happens if you sprint, if you try to complete projects too quickly. You will get tired, and you will burn out. And burnout is not fun. I have been burned out. Has anyone here ever had burnout? There we go. A lot of people have had burnout. And it's terrible, right? It's like you lose all motivation, you just can't work. And one of the things, other than not sprinting, that you can do to help with that is to take a lot of breaks. I try to take a break every half hour. I don't know if, have any of you heard of the Pomodoro technique? Right? It's one of my favorite time management techniques, where the idea is that you are focused on your work for 25 minutes, no more than that. And in that time, there's no internet, there's no people talking to you, the phone doesn't exist, your manager doesn't exist, your coworkers don't exist. You work for that 25 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break where you can do anything you want, and then you do that again 4 times, and then you take a half hour or an hour-long break. And if you're lucky, you will be able to get 3 of those sessions into a day. But that means that in those 3 sessions, you will get exactly 6 hours of work, but it will be the most focused work anybody has ever done. Because the way most people work who don't do this sort of stuff, unless they're a robot, I know a few robots, they're kind of weird, they creep me out. They can just work, and it's really weird. I can't do that. I need breaks. The thing is that the way most people work is they start working and they poke around, and then their coworker talks to them and they talk to them, and they think they've been talking for 2 minutes, but it's actually been 10. And then you open the internet and you browse around and you think it's been 5 minutes, but it's actually been 7. And at the end of the day, you notice that you've been working all day, and most of what you did was not actual work. It was just everything else. And that's where the taking scheduled breaks and the Pomodoro technique really help, because they also keep your brain fresh. One of the things I've noticed is if I don't take breaks, I can work for like maybe 3 hours, and then I'm done for the day. I just can't do it anymore. I'm too tired. But if I take breaks every half an hour, I can essentially work all day, mostly. One of the other things is you have to also defend coding time viciously, because it's your job to say from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. all I'm doing is coding. That is a nice 4-hour block of time. You can get a lot done in 4 hours. And you'll notice I just said that in the afternoon. That's because it is essentially impossible to have coding time in the morning, at least as far as I'm concerned. And it's not because I'm a night owl, which I kind of am. It's because in the morning, there's too much natural distraction. You get to work at like, I don't know, 9 or 10 a.m., or maybe because we're in Slovenia, it's at 8 a.m. But you get to work, and most people first open their email, which is wrong. Don't open your emails in the morning, unless you're a manager, because if you're not a manager, email is not the most important thing in your day. You should, if something isn't the core of your activity, schedule it for later. Do it when you're tired. Do it when you're not at your peak. Just please don't do email in the morning. It's the most boring thing you can do, and it will always take longer than you think, and it will overload your brain. It will make you tired because you have to make a lot of decisions, and then you won't be able to work as well. And right, defend coding time viciously. Seriously, when you're coding, when it's your block of time in the day to code, just do that. No meetings, no coffee breaks with other people. Just that is your time to work. And another very important thing is to just enjoy yourself. If you're working on a project that's not fun, if you're a programmer, you are doing something wrong. You're doing something terribly wrong. With the shortage of programmers we have right now, there's no reason for any of you to be bored at work. If you don't love your projects, just pick another one. Like, there are jobs everywhere. I saw a picture from a JavaScript conference in Verona the other day where they had a job board, and it said looking for work and looking for people, and the looking for people column was completely full, and the looking for work was empty. Not a single person said they are looking for work, and like 20 people said they are desperate for programmers. So if you're not enjoying yourself at work, just fire yourself or whatever. Do anything you need to do to find a project that you are going to love and that you can work on that doesn't make you tired. Because one of the most important things about flow is you have to enjoy yourself. You won't be able to get into flow if you don't like your project. And another thing, and I know this is kind of a sore topic for programmers, is you do have to work out. I'm sorry, but being in physical shape is going to help you with work. You will be able to focus better, you will be less tired, you will have more energy. And one of the interesting things about working out is that it does actually lead to needing less sleep. Because maybe it's because it gives you that hour or two in the day where you can just focus on nothing but physical activity, where your mind goes completely blank. But it does help. Being in shape gives you energy. It means you eat less crap. Also, don't eat crappy food. Don't do that, guys. Don't. I know programmers are supposed to live on Coke and pizza, but don't do that. Coke and pizza will eventually make you tired. They will make you grumpy, and they don't give you the kind of energy you need. Eat real food, please. And always remember to chill a lot. Just take breaks, sit down. There should be at least an hour in your day that you're spending just not working, being away from the computer and resting. Resting is important. Even if you don't sleep, at least take a nap. I like to take a nap in the evening because that helps me be both a morning and a night person, which is a kind of weird hack, but it works. And do a lot of relaxing. Relaxing is really important, just because the less stressed you are, the easier it is to get into flow, and the more work you will get done, because you will not be able to go into flow if your mind is racing and going to and fro and solving a bunch of different problems at the same time, because that's not how it works. That's the exact opposite of focus. And this might be a bit of a grim note to end on, but if you ever hear yourself or somebody else say, "I'm really, really busy all the time," that just means they're stupid. Because when you say, "I'm busy," and I say that a lot, I'll admit it, I say I'm busy a lot, and it's either because I'm trying to get out of a social engagement with a person I don't really like that much, or it's because I'm an idiot and took on too much work or didn't schedule it properly or just procrastinated too much. Hire me. I want to help your boss figure out how to pay you more to work less. So, questions? There we go. Question back there.
Why do programmers work at night?
Why do programmers? Mostly because they're trying to run away from managers. Because all of that stuff I said about being at work and everything else happening, well, a lot of that basically just pushes you to work either. A lot of people work late at night or late in the afternoon where everyone else is tired, or they work early in the morning like Hemingway did, because it helps you be away from people, it helps you be alone. And a lot of it is also just dragging on habits out of high school and college, because a lot of people start programming when they have a full class load in high school or college or whatever. And nighttime is essentially the only time in the day when they physically have time to code. And then they get used to it, and then they think they can't code if it's not nighttime. And it's also to do with, so you sort of train yourself in a Pavlovian way that when it's your time to code, you can code, and when it's not, you can't. So if you start very young, which most programmers do, you kind of get used to this idea that you can only work late in the afternoon or at night. And for some people, it eventually changes, but for a lot of people, it really doesn't. And one of the important things I try to achieve today is to basically tell you how you can get that nice nighttime during the day when people socially expect you to work. And it can be done. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and most people will probably think you're very annoying if you really do defend your coding time viciously. Because it turns out people don't like it when you don't let them interrupt you. They get very, very pissed off. But it's important to, because it's your job to say, I'm busy. It's your job to say, I'm working right now, and it's their job to realize, you know what? Maybe I can wait like half an hour to talk to you, because why is what I want more important than your work? Why would you have to drop everything you're doing just to talk to a person for 5 minutes and then spend another half hour getting back to work? More questions?
What do you choose between like getting in the flow or having like, let's say 25 minutes work time and 5-minute breaks? If you get in the flow,
yeah,
you just go with it, or
usually I've gotten used to my breaks enough, but I've been doing this for a few years now, so I gotten used to my breaks enough that the 5-minute break doesn't really interrupt my flow, because it's my break. I decided to have it, and like if I'm just in the half of typing out a line of code, I won't stop right when the timer says your break is up. Or if I'm reading a sentence, I won't just stop when my break is over. I do it more of in a probabilistic way, where there's a bit of fuzziness on each end. But it's more important that it's not a bigger problem for flow is if somebody else interrupts you. Because if you're working and you take a break, it doesn't mean you completely stop thinking about what you were doing. You still keep it in your brain, and you'll notice a lot of time programmers, when they take a break, they sort of do this. And that's because they're still thinking about their problem. And yeah, essentially, if it's a break you choose to take, it won't break your flow. But by all means, if you're really in flow and don't feel like taking a break, don't. Just understand that after a few hours of that, you won't be able to work for the rest of the day. Your brain will just be too tired. Another thing I forgot to mention about that's sort of related to that is work on different projects or different types of projects. Like if you spend 6 hours of your day coding and you feel like 6 hours is not enough productive time for one day, do like 2 or 3 hours of something else that's not coding but is still productive. Just don't count meetings as too productive. Because one of the things I've noticed is with my writing, I like to write in the morning and I can get like 2 or 3 hours of writing done, and then in the afternoon I start coding, and this essentially gives me 2 work days in the same day, which looks really awesome on my time tracker because I feel super happy that I'm so productive. But essentially it's solving 2 different types of problems, doing 2 different types of work, which means that they don't interact too much, so I'm not too tired for them and they don't tire me out. But your mileage may vary. Maybe I'm just lucky. I don't know. More questions? Okay, then I think that's it.